The sky has always spoken to us, in whispers of wind, in roars of thunder, and in the silence before the storm. Long ago, people lifted their eyes to the clouds. They saw a power beyond human reach, a presence that lived in lightning, a voice that rolled across the mountains. That voice was Zeus, not only a king of gods, but the eternal keeper of the skies, the one whose thunder carried meaning. His story is not only about might, it is about balance in chaos, justice in uncertainty, and harmony within the storm. When thunder echoed, mortals paused. They wondered if it was anger or if it was guidance, a reminder of promises and truth. Tonight, we step into that world, a place where clouds are thrones, where lightning writes across the sky, and where Zeus still whispers through storms. The journey begins here, in the heart of thunder, with stories older than stone, and a god whose presence never fades. Before Olympus crowned its kings, the world was a canvas of mystery. The heavens stretched endless, the seas were restless, and the earth pulsed with secrets yet unnamed. In that dawn, nothing was fixed. Mountains rose and fell with unseen rhythms. Rivers carved their stories into stone, and the stars themselves seemed to wander. Mortals had no maps, no guide to measure night and day. Only questions whispered into the sky. The sky answered with silence, or with storms. And storms were not feared alone. They were revered. Each crack of thunder felt like a heartbeat. Each flash of lightning, a message. It was as if the universe itself was alive. Alive, yet waiting for a keeper. Someone to hold the threads of chaos. Someone to weave balance from storm. That was the world before Zeus. The ancients imagined the earth heavy. They felt the sea deep beyond measure. And the sky was the greatest mystery of all. The sky had no boundaries. It stretched without end. It spoke in ways that mortals could not explain. Sometimes gentle, a breeze that carried the scent of blossoms. Sometimes fierce, a gale that tore across valleys and seas. But always present. The sky was the stage, and in time, it would crown its guardian. When people gazed upward, they felt small. Yet within that smallness grew awe. Awe gave birth to story. Stories gave birth to gods. And among them, one rose with thunder in his breath. His name would be Zeus. But in the beginning, he was not yet known. The cosmos moved without clear order. The sea crashed without command. And the earth trembled without reason. The first mortals lived close to these forces. They planted crops, uncertain of the rain. They prayed for sunlight, but feared drought. They watched storms roll in, not knowing their purpose. In those storms, they sensed a presence, a spirit vast as the horizon, a will that could not be seen, only felt. This was the dawn of Olympus's story. Not with swords, not with battles, but with wonder. For wonder was the first law. It bound humans to the sky. It bound the sea to the shore. It bound the stars to their eternal dance. Zeus would come as the keeper of that wonder. His thunder would be more than sound. It would be language. It would be the voice of order. It would be the reminder that chaos itself could be shaped. In this dawn, before his throne, all was waiting. Waiting for lightning to strike meaning into the sky. Waiting for clouds to gather beneath his gaze. Waiting for the first sign of the eternal thunder. And so, the people watched. They told stories by firelight. They shared dreams of a presence above. Some said it was the storm itself. Some said it was a hidden king. Others said it was the soul of the heavens. All were searching for a name. And when thunder rolled across the mountains, and when lightning split the night with fire, that name came alive. Zeus, the eternal thunder, was born in their hearts, not yet crowned, not yet revealed, but present, in every whisper of wind, in every roar of storm, in every silence before the dawn. This was the beginning, the dawn of Olympus, the world waiting for its sky's keeper. And the keeper was already listening, already breathing, already eternal. The rise of Zeus began with whispers of destiny. He was born beneath the shadow of vast eternity. The sky already seemed to wait for him. Each cloud drifted as if in silent ceremony. The winds curled with promise of a guardian. Even the stars bent their light toward his path. The world sensed a shift in its rhythm. Chaos would soon bow to harmony. Zeus carried within him the breath of thunder. It was not fury, but balance. Not wrath, but resonance. His presence stirred the unseen order of the cosmos. Mountains felt his strength. Oceans felt his calm. The heavens trembled, not in fear, but in welcome. He was the child of the sky, the one chosen to keep its vast domain. Mortals had no name for him yet. They only felt the change in the air. Storms softened when he gazed upward. Lightning burned brighter, yet steadier. Rain fell with new rhythm, feeding the soil. It was as though the sky recognized its air. Zeus grew not in shadow, but in light. His voice carried the first echoes of command, not orders of force, but calls of harmony. Every creature felt the truth of his words. Birds rose into calmer skies. Wolves howled beneath gentler moons. Even rivers followed smoother courses. Nature itself was answering him. Zeus was more than a presence. He was a bridge between chaos and order, between silence and song, between sky and earth. As he rose, so did the promise of balance. Mortals began to speak of him in awe. They said a new keeper was rising. They told tales of thunder that carried meaning. Not destruction, but guidance. Not terror, but assurance. Zeus was becoming their unseen protector. The air around him shimmered with power. Clouds gathered as companions, not enemies. Lightning circled his steps like silver rivers. Every storm seemed to pause at his will. He did not silence the storm. He spoke through it. Each thunderclap became his language. Each flash of light, his signature. Mortals began to look upward with hope. They trusted the thunder as they trusted the Sunday. For thunder now had a voice, and that voice was Zeus. As he grew, so did his place in the world. The sky itself became his crown, the horizon his throne, the winds his messengers, the stars his counsel. Every element of heaven welcomed him. They knew he was not there to conquer. He was there to guide. He was there to bring balance to the eternal expanse. The rise of Zeus was not sudden. It was steady, like dawn unfolding. Each day brighter than the last. Each night filled with deeper wonder. Mortals began building fires to honor him. They carved his name into memory. They told their children of the one above, the one who carried thunder without cruelty, the one who promised order without chains. Zeus became more than a god. He became a horizon of hope, a reminder that storms could sing, a sign that chaos could serve harmony. And so, the rise of the sky's keeper continued, not in silence, but in thunder, not in fear, but in wonder. Zeus was no longer just a promise. He was presence. He was balance. He was eternal. The thunderbolt was not merely fire from the sky. It was a symbol carved into the heart of eternity, a mark that told mortals the sky was alive. Zeus held the thunderbolt as his eternal companion. It was more than power. It was promise. It was more than lightning. It was language. Each strike lit the horizon with clarity. Each flash reminded mortals of divine presence. The thunderbolt was not forged in rage. It was born from order. From the very fabric of the heavens, it glowed as a beacon of justice. Mortals saw it as fearsome, yet they also saw it as protective, a flame that separated darkness from truth, a torch that reminded them of the eternal balance. The thunderbolt carried no blood. It carried light, and with light came vision. Zeus became the bearer of that vision. He was not only the wielder of storms, he was the guardian of clarity. The eagle soared beside him as messenger. High above mountains, it traced circles of strength. Its wings cut the air like whispers of eternity. To mortals, the eagle was a sign of Zeus. When they saw it, they bowed in reverence. It was the shadow of the sky's keeper. The oak tree stood as another companion. Roots deep in earth, branches wide toward heaven, The oak was steadfast through storm, and Sunday, mortals believed Zeus spoke through its leaves. Every rustle was a whisper of the divine. Every acorn was a seed of promise. The oak symbolized strength without cruelty. It stood as a bridge between earth and sky. The thunderbolt, the eagle, the oak, three symbols bound to Zeus forever. Each carried a piece of his eternal story. Together they painted the portrait of his power, not power of chains, but power of balance. The thunderbolt was clarity in storm. The eagle was vision in flight. The oak was endurance in time. Mortals saw these signs and felt less alone. They believed Zeus watched through thunder, guided through eagle's flight, and promised stability through oak's roots. Symbols gave shape to mystery. They turned unseen power into story, and stories became memory. Through memory, Zeus lived eternal. Every strike of thunder was his signature, every soaring eagle his reminder, every oak his presence on earth. The ancients learned to read the sky. They learned to trust the signs of Zeus. They feared storms less. They welcomed the rain as blessing. They honored the oak as sacred. They lifted their eyes to the eagle, and they spoke his name with devotion. Zeus became more than a ruler of Olympus. He became the eternal symbol of harmony, the keeper of thunder and truth, the friend of storm and soil, the sky's eternal guardian. In the heart of every thunderbolt was justice. In the flight of every eagle was vision. In the roots of every oak was strength. And in all of them, the presence of Zeus, the Thunder Eternal, the Keeper Everlasting, the God whose symbols spoke without end. Thus the world saw him, not only in storms, not only in lightning, but in every sign written across nature. Zeus, eternal in his thunder, enduring in his symbols, alive in every whisper of sky and leaf. And so his story deepened, his symbols shone brighter than flame, and mortals listened, always, for his voice. Olympus was not only a mountain, it was a vision carved into the sky, a throne raised above the clouds, a place where gods and stars shared counsel. Zeus found his seat upon Olympus with quiet power, not through conquest, but through balance, not by fear, but by harmony. The heavens themselves seemed to crown him. Every breeze carried whispers of his reign. Every dawn painted his presence in gold. Mortals looked upward and saw Olympus glowing. They believed it was touched by eternity. They believed it was home of the sky's keeper. Zeus sat upon his throne of clouds, yet it was not distance that defined him. It was nearness. The thunder rolled like his voice across valleys. The lightning flashed like his gaze through darkness, and the rains fell like blessings upon the fields. To the gods, Zeus was a guide, a keeper of order when tempers rose, a voice of calm when chaos stirred. He ruled not with chains, but with presence. The throne of Olympus was not a seat of tyranny. It was a circle of counsel, a space where gods gathered to share their voices. And Zeus, eternal in his patience, listened. He listened to Poseidon's tides of thought. He listened to Hera's wisdom of bonds. He listened to Athena's clarity of mind. Each voice was woven into the fabric of Olympus. Each story became part of the eternal chorus. Zeus did not silence their words. He guided them, like a storm guided by steady winds. Like a river shaped by unseen gravity, the throne of Olympus stood as a symbol. It was not higher than the world below. It was connected to it. Mortals prayed to Olympus as if it were near. They spoke to the clouds as if to family. They believed their voices reached Zeus, and in the rumble of thunder, he answered, not always with clarity, sometimes with mystery. For mystery was part of his reign. It reminded mortals that life itself was sacred, that not all questions were meant for answers. Some were meant for wonder. Olympus became a mirror of the heavens. It glowed in Sunday. It shimmered in moonlight. It stood strong through storm. And at its heart was Zeus, the keeper of thrones not for glory, but for guardianship. The gods respected his place, for they knew Olympus thrived through balance. Without balance, even gods faltered. With balance, they endured like stars. Zeus carried the weight of Olympus with ease. His thunder was not burden. It was music. It was the steady drum of eternity. The throne of Olympus glowed brighter with time. It was not stone that made it eternal. It was presence, the presence of the sky's eternal guardian. Mortals dreamed of Olympus in their sleep. They saw Zeus in visions of light. They felt his watch in the calm of storms. And they told stories that kept his throne alive. For Olympus was more than mountain. It was faith made visible. It was hope given form. And at its center sat Zeus, the eternal thunder, the endless balance, the king whose throne touched heaven and earth alike. And so Olympus endured, not through walls, not through crowns, but through the eternal presence of Zeus, a throne of clouds, a crown of storms, and a reign that carried no end. Zeus was not only the keeper of storms, he was the guardian of truth, the protector of oaths spoken by gods and mortals. Every promise was sacred under his watch. Every word carried the weight of eternity. When mortals swore by the sky, they swore by Zeus. The heavens heard every vow. The thunder remembered every word. No lie could escape his gaze. No broken oath went unnoticed. To speak falsely was to call thunder upon oneself. Yet his thunder was not punishment. It was reminder. It was the echo of truth demanding to be honored. Zeus valued bonds above crowns. He knew kingdoms could fall without trust. He knew friendships crumbled when oaths broke. He taught that promises were bridges, bridges between hearts, bridges between gods and men. A broken bridge left both sides lost. And so Zeus watched the oaths of all. Kings lifted cups to swear their loyalty. Travelers vowed to return to their homes. Lovers pledged eternal devotion under the stars. Each vow whispered into the sky reached Zeus. Each oath became part of his eternal memory. Mortals believed the eagle carried their words upward. They believed thunder sealed their promises. And when lightning cut the night, they felt reassured, for it meant their words had been heard. Zeus became the unseen witness of countless lives, the silent listener of secret vows, the guardian of the bonds that shaped the world. When a king broke his promise, storms gathered, not to destroy, but to remind. When a friend betrayed a friend, thunder echoed, not as wrath, but as warning. The voice of Zeus asked, "Remember your words? Remember the bond you chose to protect?" Mortals began to live more carefully. They weighed their words before speaking. They spoke vows with reverence, for they knew the sky was listening. Zeus was more than a god of lightning. He was a god of trust. His power was not only in thunderbolts, it was in the silence that followed. In that silence, truth was felt. In that silence, promises grew roots. Zeus's guardianship of oaths shaped the world. Nations held peace through sworn words. Families endured through promises of care. Friendships deepened through loyalty spoken aloud. All of these lived under Zeus's eternal witness. The gods, too, honored him in this role. They swore by his name when they pledged. They knew his thunder heard even them. Even immortals could not escape his gaze. Olympus thrived on trust, as mortals did. Zeus became the pillar that kept it whole. His thunder reminded gods and mortals alike that truth was eternal, that promises were sacred, that loyalty was divine. The keeper of oaths was not feared. He was respected, for he did not punish with cruelty. He guided with memory. He reminded with storm, and he restored balance with truth. When thunder rolled, mortals paused. They whispered, "Zeus remembers." They held hands tighter. They kept their word, for they knew the sky was listening, and the sky never forgot. Thus Zeus reigned not only with lightning, but with loyalty, not only with power, but with trust. He was eternal witness, eternal guardian, the keeper of oaths unbroken, the protector of promises eternal. The sky above Olympus often mirrored Zeus's thoughts. Calm skies spoke of harmony. Storms whispered of lessons yet to be learned. For Zeus was not only a ruler of thunder, he was a guardian of justice, a keeper of fairness when shadows of doubt appeared. Mortals believed justice was written in stone, but Zeus taught that justice was alive. Like the wind, it shifted, it adapted, it grew with time. Every choice carried weight. Every action left ripples in the world. Zeus watched these ripples carefully. He saw how lies spread like dark clouds. He saw how truth shone like sunlight, breaking storm. And he sought balance. When disputes rose among mortals, they prayed to Zeus. When kings could not agree, they lifted eyes to the sky, for they knew the thunder carried judgment. But it was not judgment of wrath. It was judgment of clarity. Zeus listened to both sides of the storm. He weighed hearts, not only words. He felt intentions, not only outcomes. And then he answered, often through sighing. A sudden break in the clouds, a roll of thunder at a decisive moment, a bolt of lightning striking near but not on. Mortals learned to see these signs as verdicts. They trusted his justice, for it was fair. It belonged not to one side, but to truth. Zeus himself valued justice above power, for without justice, power was hollow. Without fairness, even gods could falter. He knew justice was not about punishment. It was about restoring balance. It was about healing what had been broken. When mortals quarreled, storms passed overhead. When harmony returned, sunlight followed. This rhythm became his silent law. Even on Olympus, disputes arose. Gods argued. Voices clashed like storms. But Zeus, steady as the mountain, listened. He reminded them that justice was shared, that no god stood above truth, not even himself. This humility gave weight to his throne. It made Olympus a council, not a cage. It made his rule guidance, not command. Mortals carried these lessons into their lives. They built courts under the open sky. They swore their cases before the heavens, for they believed Zeus watched, that the sky itself witnessed their search for fairness. Injustice was heavy, but justice was light. Zeus taught that light could return, that storms passed, but balance endured. Through his guidance, mortals learned patience. They learned to wait for storms to clear. They learned not to rush to anger, for justice was steady, like thunder rolling. It arrived when needed, not when demanded. Zeus showed that even in chaos, order lived. Even in conflict, harmony waited. It was not silence that made peace. It was balance between voices. It was respect for truth beyond pride. His thunder reminded mortals of this balance, not through fear, but through wisdom, not through force, but through presence. Thus, Zeus became more than a god of sky. He became the breath of justice itself, the voice carried on wind, the reminder etched in storm, the promise that fairness never sleeps. When thunder spoke, mortals listened. When storms parted, they felt renewed. They carried justice into their homes, into their kingdoms, into their hearts. For Zeus taught that justice was not distant. It lived in every word. It lived in every act. And it lived forever beneath the sky that never forgot, the thunder that always remembered, the eternal balance of Zeus. The seasons moved in rhythm, and Zeus was their unseen conductor. When winter wrapped the earth in silence, he watched. When spring brought blossoms, he smiled through rain. When summer's warmth ripened the fields, he blessed. When autumn gathered harvests, he reminded of gratitude. Each season was not random but guided. Zeus wove balance through them like threads in a tapestry. Mortals looked to the skies to mark their days. They knew the sun's rising was under his watch. They knew the rains fell because he allowed them. And so, they honored him through each passing turn. Spring was sacred to beginnings. Seeds pressed into soil carried silent prayers. Thunder above was seen as approval. Rain was blessing. And every bud opening was a promise fulfilled. Zeus's thunder in spring was gentle, not fierce, but awakening. It stirred the ground, the rivers, the hearts of men. Summer carried another voice of Zeus. The sky stretched wide and proud. Storms rolled across fields, heavy with life. Lightning danced not in anger, but in joy. Mortals rejoiced under sunlight, yet thanked the storm, for it was the storm that fed their fields. Zeus's laughter was heard in rolling clouds. His strength was felt in each clear dawn. Autumn was a quieter hymn. The thunder softened into distance. The lightning flickered less, but the harvest whispered of his hand. Every grain stored, every fruit gathered. All carried memory of his balance. Mortals gave thanks, for they knew abundance was borrowed. They shared feasts beneath the sky. They offered first fruits to Zeus. They sang songs of gratitude with each meal, for they understood giving back kept harmony alive. Winter came with solemn grace. The storms grew fierce, yet also protective, snow-blanketed fields like a shield. Zeus's thunder rumbled deep, a reminder of rest. Mortals gathered by fire, telling stories of him. They spoke of storms endured and blessings received. They passed tales of Zeus to children by the hearth. And so the cycle continued, not as chance, but as rhythm, not as case, but as eternal order. Zeus's role in seasons was not command. It was guidance. He let the earth breathe, sleep, wake, and thrive. Mortals saw in this a lesson for life. That rest was as sacred as labor. That gratitude was as important as desire. That storms and calm were both needed. And that every ending carried seeds of beginning. The gods, too, felt this rhythm. Olympus mirrored the seasons in mood. Feasts in spring, debates in summer, reflections in autumn. Even gods rested more in winter. Zeus, eternal in his patience, never hurried time. He knew each season had its place. He knew each moment held purpose. And so he let the wheel turn. Mortals came to trust this turning. They no longer feared storms blindly. They saw them as chapters in a greater book. They learned patience through winter, hope through spring, strength through summer, wisdom through autumn, all under the watchful thunder of Zeus. For he was not only storm, he was cycle, he was rhythm, he was the eternal conductor of seasons. And in his balance, the world endured. The earth turned, the skies shifted, but his presence never waned. Through him, mortals learned harmony with time itself, and they whispered, "The thunder is eternal." The eagle soared above Olympus, wings spread wide against the Sunday. It was not an ordinary bird. It was the sacred companion of Zeus, a living emblem of his watchful power. Mortals saw its flight as a sign of blessing, for wherever the eagle went, Zeus's gaze followed. Its cry pierced the skies like thunder in daylight. Its eyes glimmered with the fire of lightning. To see the eagle was to know Zeus was near, not in form, but in presence. The eagle carried prayers upon its wings. Mortals believed their whispers reached Zeus through its flight. They left offerings at mountain peaks. They traced its shadow with reverence. And they waited for its call before great journeys. The eagle was not only a messenger, it was also a guardian. When kings rose to power, the eagle circled above. When oaths were spoken, it perched in silence. When storms gathered, it cut through clouds with grace. Zeus entrusted the eagle with his watch, not of thrones, but of hearts. Not of crowns, but of promises. The gods, too, respected the eagle's flight. Athena called it wisdom in motion. Apollo named it the hymn of the sky. Even Hera acknowledged its steadfastness, for it never faltered in its service. Its wings spanned across myths and memories. Mortals carved it into stone. They painted it on shields. They raised banners bearing its likeness. The eagle became the bridge between heaven and earth, a reminder that Zeus was never far. In battlefields, its shadow gave courage. In councils, its flight gave clarity. In solitude, its cry gave comfort. The eagle also guided storms. It soared through thunderclouds unshaken. It turned lightning into rivers of light. Mortals who saw it were reminded of strength. Strength not to destroy, but to endure. The eagle taught resilience through its flight. Zeus's bond with the eagle was unbroken. It was said the bird was born of storm, feathers kissed by rain, wings forged in wind, eyes lit by the first bolt of lightning. And so it belonged to Zeus, not as servant, but as reflection, a mirror of his eternal vigilance, a symbol of his endless reach. Through the eagle, Zeus remained present in mortal lives. They did not need to see his throne. They only needed to see wings against the sky. And their hearts steadied, for they knew the eternal thunder was watching. Legends told that when mortals faltered, the eagle appeared, not to punish, but to remind. Its cry asked, "Do you remember your oath?" Its shadow asked, "Do you walk with truth?" These reminders shaped mortal choices. They guided paths of kings and shepherds alike, for justice and truth were the same under its wings. The eagle also carried hope. When storms raged too long, it soared above clouds. Mortals saw it and remembered sunlight waited. They knew darkness never lasted forever. They knew balance always returned. Thus the eagle became more than bird. It was promise. It was memory. It was the living voice of Zeus in the skies. Wherever it flew, faith grew stronger. Wherever it cried, hearts steadied. Wherever it soared, eternity was near. For in the flight of the eagle, mortals found courage, and in its shadow, they felt the eternal thunder. Mortals often wondered why Zeus chose thunder as his voice. Why not gentle rain or soft wind? Why the roar that shook valleys and seas? The answer was not fear, but remembrance. Thunder was the heartbeat of the skies. It was the reminder that eternity still watched. When mortals grew careless, thunder called them back, not to frighten, but to awaken. For thunder was not chaos, but rhythm. It spoke of cycles greater than men could see. It told of balance in the universe. Each rumble echoed like a story retold. A story of truth. A story of bonds. A story of life renewed after storms. Children listened to thunder as to a parent's voice. They asked their elders, "What does Zeus say tonight?" And the elders answered with lessons. Be honest, for thunder remembers lies. Be faithful, for thunder keeps oaths. Be patient, for storms always pass. Thus thunder became a teacher. Its sound was never empty. It carried wisdom through every crash of sky. Mortals began to find comfort in storms. They knew noise carried meaning. They knew rumble carried truth. Zeus shaped thunder to be universal. No kingdom could ignore it. No language could confuse it. All heard it. All understood it. Even the gods paused when it rolled across Olympus, for they too knew thunder was sacred. It was not mere weather. It was voice, and a voice eternal. Mortals began to mirror thunder in their lives. They spoke with honesty, firm but not cruel. They lived with strength, loud yet purposeful. They carried patience, waiting for echoes to fade. In this way, Zeus's voice shaped civilizations. Temples rose where thunder struck closest. Songs were written in its rhythm. Drums echoed its steady power in feasts. Poets spoke of thunder as the soul of the sky. Farmers prayed for its return, for storms fed the soil. Sailors listened for its warning, guiding their ships. Lovers found promise in its echo, swearing under its roll. Thunder united lives in countless ways. It bound them to sky, to earth, to each other, and always to Zeus. For they knew thunder was not random. It came with purpose. It came with meaning. And when silence followed, they reflected. For silence was as sacred as the sound. It was in silence that lessons settled. It was in calm that balance returned. Zeus gave both thunder and silence, one to awaken, one to restore. Together, they guided the rhythm of life. Thus, mortals did not fear storms blindly. They welcomed them as dialogue with heaven. They whispered, "The sky speaks." They listened. Zeus remembers. And in every storm, they found direction. Not from commands, but from echoes. Not from fear, but from wisdom. Thunder became eternal, because wisdom was eternal. The sky never ceased teaching, and Zeus never ceased speaking. Even now, when storms rise, hearts still pause. They look upward and recall the old lessons. That balance lives in sound and silence. That promises carry weight in thunder's roll. That eternity speaks not in words, but in storms. And that Zeus, eternal, still guides through thunder. At the edge of dawn, Olympus stood silent beneath the first light. Zeus watched the horizon where night surrendered to day. This was the eternal rhythm he cherished most. For in the rising sun, he saw promise renewed. In the fading stars, he saw memory preserved. Balance between past and future lived in every dawn. Mortals awoke with songs as light touched the fields. They lifted their eyes and whispered, "Thanks." Not for wealth, but for breath. Not for crowns, but for life itself. Zeus listened, though he needed no words. For gratitude rose like incense through the air. Each prayer was small, but together they glowed bright. The eternal thunder did not always roar. Sometimes it spoke in silence of peace. Sometimes it was present only in calm skies. For even without storm, Zeus remained near. The eagle soared overhead as light deepened. It traced the sky with steady wings. Mortals pointed and smiled, knowing they were seen. Zeus's gaze was not heavy with judgment. It was steady with protection. It was constant with care. Eternity, for him, was not distance. It was closeness without end. As day warmed the mountains, stories awakened. Elders told children of the first thunder, of how the sky spoke and the earth listened, of how Zeus wove balance into creation. Children laughed, imitating the roll of storms. Their joy carried truth. Thunder was not fear. It was connection, living and eternal. Even the gods reflected in this hour. Athena spoke of wisdom enduring. Apollo sang of light that never failed. Hera whispered of bonds that never broke. All voices wove into a single harmony. For Zeus was not alone in eternity. He was part of an endless chorus, and thunder was his note within it. Mortals lived by this harmony too. They sowed in faith, reaped in patience. They built homes guided by oaths. They carried stories so they would not forget. And always, in storm or calm, they remembered. Zeus's eternal thunder shaped their way of being, not as command, but as compass, not as chain, but as guide. For true eternity was not weight, but freedom. Freedom to live with truth in each step. Freedom to rise after every fall. Freedom to trust that balance would return. This was the gift of Zeus's watch. Not thrones nor riches, but enduring rhythm. The promise that light would follow shadow. The reminder that silence was as sacred as sound. The certainty that storms taught as much as calm. At sunset, mortals gathered once more. They watched the sky turn gold and fire. They heard faint thunder rolling far beyond sight. And they smiled, for they knew its meaning. It was not farewell. It was presence. It was the eternal heartbeat of the sky. It said, I am here, always. In night's quiet, stars began their vigil. The eagle rested, wings folded in trust. Zeus's gaze lingered upon earth below. He saw not empires, but moments. Not monuments, but hearts. And in every heart that remembered truth, he dwelled. Thus the eternal thunder was never bound to clouds. It was bound to the soul of creation. It echoed not only above, but within. And so, the story of Zeus was not ending. It was living. It was breathing. It was eternal.